Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced at North Idaho College on the shores of Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guest.
Welcome to today's program. As you know, from the last 2 weeks, we are interviewing the candidates for the U.S. House of Representatives from Idaho's 1st Congressional District. We're pleased to welcome to the program today Andy Hedden-Nicely. He's lived in Idaho for 25 years, and he holds a bachelor's degree from Oklahoma State University, received in 1977. He was a commentator on Boise's CBS affiliate, KCBI program called Point 2, before he sought this seat in Congress. He's also the owner of HNA Impressions Management that he started in 1987. Welcome to our program. It's good to have you here today.
It's great to be here, Tony. Thank you very much.
And I was very pleased to always have our regular panelists, Erna Reinhardt, Director of Public Relations at North Idaho College. And I will ask the first question, if I may call you Andy.
Certainly.
We're going to ask a number of questions that we've asked other candidates. Following the 9/11 terrible murder, the President and the Congress declared war on terrorists around the world. And the first action was to go to Afghanistan and to overthrow the Taliban government that had provided a haven for Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda. In your opinion, after the overthrow of the Taliban government in Afghanistan, have we given sufficient attention to Afghanistan, including capturing Osama bin Laden, the al-Qaeda, and now dealing with the resurgence of the Taliban?
Well, Tony, it's a great question. I think it's a question that a lot of Americans and Idahoans are asking themselves. If Afghanistan is the center of the war on terrorism, then there's no question that shifting our attention to Iraq has taken our attention from that. We don't get a lot of information about what's going on there. Ultimately, the way I feel is if the United States finds it necessary to intercede around the world militarily, then we ought to have clearly defined objectives. We ought to have an exit plan for what we're doing. We ought to meet the objectives, and then we ought to turn a sovereign nation back over to its people and then remove ourselves from that. And I think that's what we should be doing in Afghanistan.
Thank you. Erna Reinhardt.
Welcome to the show, Andy. The next question is a two-part question, and it deals with Iraq. The first part of the question is, did you support the invasion of Iraq? And the second part is, now that we're there, what do you propose that we do to stop the sectarian violence, stabilize Iraq, and avoid civil war?
I did not support us invading Iraq. I think the justification that was used, which turned out to be false now, was not actually put to the American people in a way that was honest. And I felt like this information was being made up at the time. And I personally feel like war is the worst and the last option in any situation. And I felt like we had a lot of diplomatic options still open to us that we should have pursued. As far as what we're facing right now, the last stated goal that President Bush stated of why we're in Iraq, and there were several, his last stated goal was that we needed to remove Saddam Hussein from power because he was a destabilizing force in the Middle East. Our soldiers have accomplished that mission, and I think we should be very, very proud of them for getting that done. And now we need to bring them home. We've accomplished the mission in Iraq. There's going to be violence in that country for a long time. Whenever you have a war situation, there's no question that it's going to have to be dealt with. But by leaving our forces there at this point, in my opinion, we are adding to the problem. We're not solving it. And I think that what we need to do is just bring our troops out of there and if the UN wants to get involved or other Arab nations want to get involved, and I think they would, and I think Europe would get involved as well. But as long as the United States stays there, it's going to continue to be a problem for that country and for our country.
Thank you.
It seems like all of our foreign policy questions are about the Middle East, because that's where there's been so much problems, and not to ignore that there are other parts of the world that have serious questions. But the third one in foreign policy I want to talk about in your recommendations as a candidate. What recommendations do you have to settle the disputes in the Middle East between Israel and her neighbors? And we're particularly talking about the Palestinian question that's been going on for years. And secondly, would you also recommend how we should address the recent conflict in southern Lebanon and the conflict with Israel. Many experts say that as long as we don't have those conflicts resolved, then it's a spread throughout the Middle East.
Well, I really appreciate you guys throwing me these softball questions today.
That's an easy answer.
And we joke around, but there are no easy answers to these questions. The Israeli-Palestinian question is an issue that's been going on for a long time. What I firmly believe is that Israel has a right to defend itself. I have no problem with that, and I totally support that. But I do not agree with the idea of Israel using its military might, which we've supplied it, to then start pushing its neighbors around. When you talk to moderate Arabs in the entire Middle East, what they will tell you is a lot of the foreign policy decisions by the United States have allowed dictators, Omar Gaddafi in Libya, is a case in point, where we have, because he now is nice to us, we're supporting Omar Gaddafi. And it's like, wait a minute, what is this all about? Well, it forces moderate Arabs to then become, it's like, what are they going to do if they're trying to bring democracy and to bring more focus on their government, and we keep supporting dictators like the Saud family in Saudi Arabia. And we did the same thing in Iran with the Shah. When we prop up dictators in these countries, and then primarily for our business and governmental interests, then what we do is we create long-term problems for ourselves that eventually will end in violence. And what I would say is that if we believe that America is the greatest and democracy is the greatest government on the face of the earth, then that's what we should be supporting in these countries, not dictatorships. And I think that you're seeing it happen in all the instances that you've talked about. And that's where my feelings about that part of the world are.
Thank you. Arno?
The rest of our questions are about domestic issues, and the first question is about immigration policies. So one of the most hotly debated issues in our country today is about immigration and our policies regarding immigration. What would your proposals be for addressing this issue? And if you became a member of Congress, what immigration reform policies would you recommend, including border security?
Well, we passed in the United States, we passed a comprehensive immigration policy in 1986. That was, 10 years ago, 20 years ago now. And we now have 30 million illegal immigrants in our country. I say the Republicans and the Democrats have been asleep at the wheel on this issue. And, of course, now it's gotten to such proportions that people are finally sick and tired of it. I don't think there's any question, but we must secure our borders. And quite frankly, our harbors are actually more open than our borders, and our borders are a sieve. So what I'm proposing is that we should, and I'm all, if these guys want to go down there and build fences, I'm all for it. I don't have any problem with that. I say let's secure our borders and make sure that people coming into our country come in legally. The other issue that I have about this is that what's going on is a bureaucratic mess on the borders, and I think it has to do with Homeland Security. Homeland Security is the biggest, most obnoxious federal bureaucracy that we've ever created. And it's been done under this administration, and Homeland Security is so inept that what things that used to take businesses in America and immigrants trying to come into this country 2 and 3 months to accomplish now takes 2 and 3 years to accomplish. Things that used to take 6 to 8 months now take 6 to 8 years. So what you're seeing is, because of an inept federal bureaucracy, you're seeing people forced out of desperation to actually sneak into our country. And until we deal with that bureaucracy, we're never going to be able to stop the flow of illegal immigrants. So it's two-pronged for me. But one is to clean up the federal bureaucracy and make it reasonable for employers and for people who want to work for those employers to do it. I don't believe in amnesty. If people are in this country illegally, if they want citizenship, then they need to leave our country and come back in a legal way. But at the same time, if people are here working and that's what they want to do, I want to clean that up so that employers in this country and people who want to work in this country can do it in a legal way.
I want to apologize to you because when I introduced you, I didn't talk about your party affiliation, and you are with the United Party.
Yes, sir.
And maybe we'll get back to that in the end, but that you're running under the label, the United Party. Our next question, again, of course, is another domestic question, and when you said a minute ago softball questions, I guess they'll continue to be softball with all these difficulties that we face in the world. For a number of years, we have witnessed a growing deficit, which has led to a larger national debt. Because of this soaring national debt, we're now forced to borrow large amounts of money, not only from American citizens, but also from other countries such as China and Japan and Korea. What would you do to address this national economic debt?
There's no question. Our national debt right now, deficit, is almost $9 trillion. It's the largest it's ever been in the history of this country, ever. And this was done under a conservative Republican administration that has controlled both houses of Congress, and it's been done with the cooperation of the Democratic Party to a great extent. To answer your question, what I would do is I would rescind the tax cuts. When Warren Buffett stands up and says, as one of the richest men in America, I do not need these tax cuts, it's ridiculous for this country to be doing this, that I would look very hard at that. I think what we're doing, what this administration's doing and the people in Washington right now, is they're creating a class of super rich people at the expense of the middle class and the lower class of this country. And quite frankly, what they're doing, they keep talking about tax cuts. They're tax cutting for the super rich, not for the middle class and not for the lower classes. We're getting tax shifted. During the last round of tax cuts, they took away the investment tax credit for middle class families to send their kids to school. And you tell me that these people support us? I say forget it. We need to totally revamp this tax. I would like to see a flat tax in this country, quite frankly, and I think that would help as well. But I know it's difficult because of these questions are very, very complex. But what we need to do as a country is to look at our tax policy and reverse these tax cuts, is my opinion.
Thank you. Erna Reinhardt.
Our next question, Andy, has to do with our dependence on oil. So due to our dependence on oil, which has resulted in rising energy and gas prices, what do you think are some solutions to this problem, and do you have any recommendations for alternative sources of energy?
Well, yes, I do. Thanks. You guys have great questions. I tell you, and quite frankly, the things that people are talking to me out on the street when I'm out visiting with people. Well, one, what I would do in an escalating economic, especially when gas prices are moving, I would take oil off the futures market and not allow people to not allow these financiers to play fast and loose with our money. That's what happened with Enron, and we're seeing it again. Obviously, this administration is so pro-oil, it's almost ridiculous. I think it's also very cynical that we're starting to see 1 month before the election, gas prices starting to drop for the first time this year. And if people aren't suspicious about that, they should be. Obviously, what we need to do, I think we should look at antitrust against these oil companies. I think that the Congress has allowed oil companies to consolidate down to a few powerful companies that it's obvious every day that these people are controlling this resource over us. It's like any other utility that we are dealing with. And we need to, as a country, look very closely at that. Wind power is coming on very, very effectively in this state, and we've had some wonderful tax credits for them. I would encourage that. And I would like to see us bring trains back. We have been so automobile-oriented in this country for so long, and it's been great. I don't have anything wrong with that, but now it's time to invest in rail transportation again. It's some of the most exciting technology in the world. The Europeans, the Japanese, all other progressive nations are really on the ball with this, and America can be too. It would make so much more sense for us to invest our money into high-speed rail transportation than it is in this exotic military stuff that we're doing. So that's my answer to your question.
Good.
Here we go again with another challenge that we face, and it is, of course, public education is from K through 12, and higher education is an important part of a democracy or any country. And secondly, it's through educated people that the democracy is enhanced. There's a lot of discussion, debate about the role of local government, state government, national government in education funding and also regulations. What is your position on the federal government's what is called the No Child Left Behind policy, and do you support it, or do you have other recommendations for the role of the national government in education?
Well, as you stated, Tony, education is fundamental. It's bedrock to America's greatness. Public education is what has caused us to have great economics, for us to be as successful as we are. Education decisions in this country have always been held at the local level. We have always made decisions about our education system. I would abolish a No Child Left Behind. And I'm surprised that teachers who know all a system like No Child Left Behind does is teach our teachers and our students how to take tests better. That's all it does. It doesn't. What we need to be teaching our students are critical learning skills and problem solving. That's what our children need to learn. And our teachers know how to do this. Quite frankly, I would question the need for a federal level Department of Education. I would like to know what they're doing for us and how they've helped us. I would like to see those funds shifted to the state and the local level. This country, it's the magnificent variety and the innovative ideas that come from the local level is what makes our education great. Not a homogenized, bureaucratic system of teaching our kids how to take tests. What do people in Washington, D.C. know about students in Kuna, Idaho? Or in Lewiston, Idaho? What do they know? They don't know our students. They don't know our needs. But we do, and we ought to be the ones making these decisions.
I'm sure in your campaign, like the other candidates, that you're talking to a lot of people, including educators and teachers. There's a follow-up question here, and that is that these mandated tests, I believe there's twice during the cycle, the fourth grade as an example, and the teachers are spending many hours preparing the students for testing. Have you heard anything about this challenge, that when you're preparing tests, whomever's doing that, there's cultural differences, subcultures. The language in the southern states is quite different from out here. I sometimes with my students will mention certain words and they don't know what they mean because it's different. So is that one of the challenges, that even if you're going to do a nationwide testing, the way you word the questions may affect how the students can respond?
I don't think you should have nationwide testing. You're really making my point for me, and I appreciate it. We should be educating our students locally, not nationally. It doesn't make any sense. And it's been proven. Our best educated minds in this country know that teaching students how to take tests is not the answer to our problems. And we've got a lot of issues around education. There's no question that we need a new vibrancy in our education. You've got students that are bored, you've got teachers that are bored, and we've got a system that education should be the most exciting thing that our students deal with every day. It shouldn't be a burden to them. And when we have to drag our kids to school and set them down and do the things that we're doing right now to help them learn, we need to find out what is going on here. And to teach them how to take a better test is not the answer. The answer is, quite frankly, is to put more resources and more attention toward our teachers as opposed to administration. And we have some great administrators here, but administrators know how to push paper around. They don't know how to teach students. And we need to listen to our teachers, and we need to listen to our parents too, quite frankly. And that collaboration, I think, is the way we need to go for our education system.
Thank you. Erna Reinhardt.
Based on recent revelations that powerful lobbyists have engaged in illegal activities that have recently resulted in criminal prosecutions, what should Congress do to control or regulate the influence of lobbyists?
Thank you. We cannot expect Congress ever to police itself. That's where I've gotten to in my 51 years of life, is what you have when you run for office, what you find out is you have this big book of regulations that a couple of lawyers or a whole team of lawyers dream this stuff up. And of course, they're written in a way that they can understand and we can't. And it's just a big game of smoke and mirrors. What we need to do is go back to the Contract with America. That's how the Republicans got in control. And it was actually a great program, and they actually implemented some of it. But the one thing they forgot about was term limits for the U.S. Congress. We term limit the president because we don't want a king in this country. We now need to term limit Congress. And as an independent, when I'm elected to this office, I'll have a national platform to bring this up once again. And we need to be talking about this. The only way we're going to deal with the systemic corruption of Congress, and believe me, I don't care how good you are in your heart and your life, when you get to that much power and that much money, anybody can be corrupted. I think it's unrealistic for us as a society not to realize that. So what we need to do is to limit Congress to 6 terms in the U.S. House and 2 terms in the Senate. That gives everybody 12 years to perform your public service. And if you can't get it done in 12 years, then we don't need you up there anyway, quite frankly. It would also allow us, besides making it much more difficult for the lobbyists to corrupt people, it would also allow us as a society to have fresh ideas and new blood, and it would actually invigorate the population because more people would know there would be opportunities to get involved. And so that's my answer.
Awesome.
Another question we can't fail to recognize, because it's really been a major, major issue, and that's health care. And one of the greatest concerns of Americans is escalating cost of health care, that also includes over 40 million, some people say as high as 45 million Americans without any health care coverage, including a lot of children. What solutions would you propose for solving this critical issue?
Guys, you guys really have great questions. I have to compliment you. These are the things I'm talking about every day to people. And quite frankly, healthcare is the biggest issue with small businesses in Idaho. And what's happened is we have been priced out of the market. So what I'm calling for right now is a tax credit for all small businesses of 100 and less employees to write off 100% of their healthcare insurance costs for a family and their employees off their federal income tax. 100%. The way we would pay for this is we'd rescind these last two big tax breaks for the super rich in this country. This would now enable small businesses to afford to not only give themselves health insurance, but also their employees. Now, the second part of this problem is how do you deal with the escalating cost of health care? 40% of the cost of health care right now in America is administrative cost, which means those are those big Taj Mahal insurance companies that we see down in the Boise Valley. That's what we're paying for. We're not paying for good health care. What we're paying for are these expensive administrators for insurance companies. And quite frankly, they've taken over our country, and everyone knows it. And so the two parts that I would like to see, there's a company in Boise called HealthWise. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. The company been around. It was a small company, and it's grown up now, and it's quite large. But they provide understandable, solution-based healthcare information for consumers written in a way that makes sense to people. What it does, and it's been proven over and over again, because some of the largest HMOs in the country are using this system, and the entire country of Canada has purchased it. It allows people, when they have a healthcare question, to go to the HealthWise handbook or to go online, and through a process of asking questions in very plain English, it allows people to make decisions in a really intelligent way. So I think we ought to encourage this kind of a system. The other thing that I think we ought to look at is negotiating with our pharmaceuticals. Is it not, am I the only one that thinks it's ludicrous that our seniors have to go to Canada to buy the same medication for a much reduced price than they can get here in America because of our administration deems it necessary for our pharmaceuticals to have higher profit margins in America than anywhere else in the world? Well, I think those two areas is where I would start. And then I would like to see much more competition. But the healthcare industry, doctors really would like to see a single payer system in this country. And I'm really open to that. I think we also really ought to look at just putting this all on Medicare. If we can go into $6 trillion of deficit spending over the stuff that these guys are spending money on, this country has a lot of money. In fact, we are the richest country in the world. It's not that we don't have money to pay for health care and good education and good transportation. We've got the money. It's just that we keep sending people to Washington that keep getting the rich people richer, and we just need to change that. So that's where I'm at.
Erna Reinhardt.
Our final question, and timing-wise, you're doing perfect. Okay. What is your position on the use of federal public lands in the state of Idaho, and do you favor or oppose Congressman Simpson's bill regarding the use of public lands?
I love Simpson's bill, and I've been on the record several times, and I like Crapo's bill for the Owyhees too. My feeling about this, and this is really what I would like, I think this is what small business people do, is that we sit down, we listen to all the sides, we try to figure out a good workable solution that includes everybody at the table. What I see too much is that these decisions are made unilaterally in this country without taking into account, the snowmobilers or the this or the that. And I think both of them have done a wonderful job of getting everybody at the table and then making compromise. That's what our government is all about. We're not going to get everything. It's not a perfect wilderness bill, but what is perfect in this country? But I think they've both worked very, very hard to get us protected wildlife and at the same time allow access and to mitigate some of the property rights that people have, and that's what we need out of our congressional delegation. So I support both of these bills. I think if the federal government, I'll tell you another one that comes up, and I'll just address it quickly, is this wolf issue. In central Idaho, it's a very big concern to the families who live there. And if the biologists are telling us that we have to have large carnivores within our ecosystem in order to make our ecosystems healthy, I'm not necessarily against that. If that's what we need to do, then I'm willing to listen to the experts. But I'm not willing to allow them to dump wolves into the backyards of families in this district and then walk away from it. And pretend it doesn't exist. And I don't know that it's intentional or these people are just out to lunch. But if you're going to put wolves in somebody's neighborhood, then you need to be on top of it, and they're not. And I've totally changed my idea about this program, not based on the need for the program, but based on the way that the people who are implementing this program have implemented it. They are not helping these people, they're not answering their questions, and they're not dealing with this on a day-to-day basis.
And finishing our program with the other candidates, we've been so successful in all three getting all the questions in, but we want to end the program, and you have a little time to let you speak to the voters about whether you should be elected to Congress.
Great. Well, here's my prop for people to know. There are 435 members in the U.S. Congress. That's how many jelly beans I've got in my jar. I do this every day with people. The black ones in my jar are the number of lawyers that we have in the U.S. Congress right now. There are, if you don't know, about a third of our congressmen are lawyers right now. It's about 175. Both my opponents, Larry Grant and Bill Sally, are lawyers. I'm a small business owner from Boise, Idaho. Small business pays more taxes. We employ more people than any other business segment in the state of Idaho. Small business is the lifeblood of our state. And quite frankly, if we keep sending corporate lawyers to Washington, D.C. to represent our interests, we're going to keep getting the short end of the stick. What I would like to do is to go to Washington and represent your interest. I'm out stumping every day. I'm talking to people on the streets because I want to know what you feel, what you want to know, and then I'll go to Washington and represent you. And I've never been elected before. I'm not a politician. I'm a small business owner. I've raised a family here. But I love this country, and I love this state, and I'd like to go to Washington to represent our interests.
Thank you very much. Our guest today is Andy Hayden Nicely. He is from Boise, Idaho, and in introducing the program, we indicated his background for you. And again, for those who turned in late, we might once again point out that he has been a commentator with the Boise CBS affiliate KCBI program on Point 2 before he is running for Congress. He holds a bachelor's degree from Oklahoma State University and is the owner of HNA Impressions Management, started in 1987, and he's running on the United Party. And we have already on the program interviewed the Republican candidate and the Democratic candidate. Again, on behalf of Erna Reinhardt and our staff, thank you for coming to our studio. And we, during election years, love to get the candidates here so the viewers can listen to all of them and weigh their different viewpoints. And again, thank you very much.
You bet.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you'll be with us again next week on our program. We always love to have you here, and we also invite you to always write to us or call us about any suggestions you have for future programs. As I have said in recent weeks, this is really a long-running program. We've been on the air. We're in our 35th year, and we hear from a lot of you, and we really appreciate the opportunity to come into your homes and your businesses. And hope you'll be with us again next week. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running in-house college production on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.